The first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the light, bright, blinding like a flare in the dark. It stung, and I had to blink several times before the world came into focus. The room around me was sterile white, the kind you'd expect in a hospital. My body ached, every inch of me feeling sore and heavy, as if I'd been crushed and then pieced back together. I tried to move my hand, but something tugged at my wrist. I looked down to see an IV taped to my arm. A soft beeping sound echoed nearby, steady and rhythmic, like the beating of a heart. I felt hollow, like I was missing something important, something I should remember.
Victoria?
A man's voice came from my side, gentle and cautious. I turned my head, squinting against the light, and saw him. A man with dark hair and warm eyes, his face lined with worry, but breaking into a smile when he saw I was awake. He moved closer, his gaze softening as he took my hand in his.
Victoria!
He said again, his voice shaking with relief.
You're awake!
Victoria?
The name sounded strange, like it didn't quite fit, but I couldn't think of anything else. I wanted to say, no, that's not me, but the words wouldn't come. My mind was blank, an empty, terrifying void where my memories should be.
Yes, Victoria. You've been through something terrible. I've been here every day, waiting for you to wake up.
He continued, still holding my hand.
Who are you?
I whispered, my voice raspy. His face fell, a flicker of sadness passing over his features.
I'm Greg, your husband. We've been through a lot together.
He said gently. I blinked, trying to absorb his words, but it was like they were slipping through my mind as if I were trying to grasp at water. Husband? It felt surreal, like something out of a dream. I wanted to remember him, to feel some connection, but my mind was completely empty. Greg sighed, his expression softening with understanding.
The doctors warned me that memory loss was possible. You were in an accident, a terrible one. There was an explosion.
He explained, his tone calm and reassuring.
An explosion?
I repeated, feeling a cold chill. He nodded, his face shadowed with pain.
You were caught in a fire. The doctor said it was a miracle you survived, but you were badly hurt. You've had several surgeries. They had to reconstruct parts of your face.
My hand instinctively rose to my cheek, and I felt the rough, uneven texture of bandages covering my skin. I winced, feeling a twinge of pain as I traced the outline of my face, which felt unfamiliar and strange.
You're still beautiful.
Greg whispered, his voice filled with tenderness.
To me, you'll always be beautiful.
I wanted to believe him, but I felt like a stranger in my own skin. My fingers shook as I let my hand fall back to the bed, too overwhelmed to respond. I couldn't remember the accident. Couldn't remember Greg. Couldn't even remember my own life. It was as if everything had been wiped clean, leaving me with nothing but a hollow, aching emptiness. He squeezed my hand, his gaze steady and comforting.
Don't worry, Victoria,
he said.
We'll get through this together. I'll be here for you, no matter how long it takes.
Victoria.
I murmured, testing the name on my tongue. It felt foreign, like trying on a stranger's coat. But I nodded, not wanting to upset him.
Yes, Victoria,
he said, smiling softly.
Rest now. The doctors say it's the best thing for you. I'll be here when you wake up.
I closed my eyes, letting the darkness pull me under, hoping that when I woke again, something, anything, would make sense. When I opened my eyes next, it was night. The room was dimly lit, and I felt a little stronger, though my body was still sore and heavy. I glanced around, seeing Greg slumped in a chair by my bed, his head resting on his hand as if he'd been keeping vigil by my side. My gaze drifted to the table beside me where a small stack of photos lay, carefully arranged. Curious, I reached out, picking up the first one. It was a picture of me, or at least someone who was supposed to be me. Her face was different from the one I felt beneath the bandages, softer and unmarked. She was smiling, leaning into Greg's side as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I flipped through the photos, seeing more images of us together in different places. A beach, a party, a cozy living room. Each one showed us looking happy, like a couple deeply in love. As I looked at the photos, I felt a strange disconnect, like I was looking at someone else's life. I wanted to remember, to feel something familiar, but the images felt distant, like scenes from a movie I'd once watched but couldn't quite recall. As I set the photos back on the table, Greg stirred, lifting his head and rubbing his eyes. When he saw me holding the photos, he smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his gaze.
I thought those might help.
He said softly.
Help you remember.
I nodded, not sure what to say.
Thank you.
I whispered, feeling a wave of gratitude for his patience, his kindness. He was trying so hard to make me feel comfortable, to help me remember a life that still felt foreign to me. Over the next few days, Greg visited every day, bringing little things he said I loved. My favorite books, a scarf he'd given me for our anniversary, a small stuffed bear that, according to him, I'd had since childhood. He told me stories, too, about our life together, painting a picture of a happy marriage filled with love and laughter. I tried to piece it all together to make sense of this life that was supposed to be mine. But no matter how hard I tried, my memories wouldn't come. It was like staring at a wall, unable to see beyond it. One afternoon, as Greg was telling me about a trip we'd taken to the mountains, I interrupted him.
Do you have any family nearby?
I asked, my voice tentative.
Or friends, people we used to see?
Greg's face shifted, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second.
No, not really. Your family lives far away and we mostly kept to ourselves. We loved it. We were pretty private.
I nodded slowly, trying to process his answer. It felt strange, almost lonely, to think that we'd lived so quietly, just the two of us. But I didn't want to question him, not when he'd been so kind, so patient. He reached out, taking my hand and giving it a gentle squeeze.
Don't worry, Victoria.
He said softly.
I got your back.
The words were meant to be comforting, but as he held my hand, I felt the opposite. I forced myself to smile, telling myself that it was just the memory loss, that I was overthinking things. Greg had been nothing but kind, nothing but supportive. I had no reason to doubt him. But as I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feelings of despair, fear, and emptiness. The next morning, as I was dozing off, I heard a soft knock on the door. A nurse poked her head in, her expression sympathetic.
How are you feeling, Victoria?
She asked, her voice gentle.
I'm not sure.
I replied, managing a small smile.
Just trying to make sense of everything.
She nodded, her gaze lingering on me a moment longer than usual.
If there's anything you need, let us know. And if you ever want to talk about anything, we're here to listen.
Her words were kind, but there was something in her tone that made me pause, as if she was trying to tell me something without actually saying it. I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, but before I could, she gave me a quick nod and slipped out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat there, her words echoing in my mind.
If you ever want to talk...
Why would I need to talk? Why would she look at me like that? I shook my head, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as I settled back into bed, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. And for the first time, I wondered if there was more to my accident than Greg had told me.